Ever wondered what really brought Hitler's Germany, Mussolini's Italy, and Imperial Japan together during World War II? We call them the Axis powers, but was it a true friendship, a shared master plan, or something else entirely? The story is way more complicated and fascinating than you might think. Let's peel back the layers of propaganda and dive into the real reasons these three powers joined forces. It all starts in the aftermath of World War I. Germany was crushed by the Treaty of Versailles, forced to pay massive reparations, disarm its military, and accept full blame for the war. This created a deep sense of national humiliation and a burning desire for revenge. The economic chaos of the 1920s and the Great Depression only made things worse, paving the way for a radical leader like Adolf Hitler. He promised to restore Germany's greatness, tear up the treaty, and reclaim lost territories. His Nazi ideology was built on aggressive expansionism, racial supremacy, and the idea of Lebensraum, living space for the German people. Meanwhile, in Italy, a similar story was unfolding. Italy had been on the winning side of World War I, but they felt cheated at the peace conference. They didn't get the territory they were promised, leading to a feeling of a mutilated victory. This widespread discontent, combined with economic instability, allowed Benito Mussolini and his fascist party to seize power. Mussolini dreamed of rebuilding a new Roman Empire, dominating the Mediterranean and expanding Italy's colonial influence in Africa. Like Hitler, his vision was fueled by ultranationalism, militarism, and a rejection of the existing international order. So right away, we see a common thread. Both Germany and Italy were revisionist powers. They were deeply unhappy with the world map drawn up after World War I and were determined to redraw it by force. They hated the liberal democracies like Britain and France, who they saw as the guardians of this unfair system. This shared enemy and shared ambition created a natural bond. Their first major collaboration was in the Spanish Civil War in the mid-1930s. Both Hitler and Mussolini sent troops, weapons, and aircraft to support General Franco's nationalist forces against the democratically elected government. This was more than just helping a fellow authoritarian. It was a dress rehearsal for a larger war. They tested their new military tactics, like Germany's Blitzkrieg, and solidified their political alliance. Spain became the training ground where fascism and Nazism worked hand in hand. This cooperation led to the Rome-Berlin Axis in 1936, a pact that formally recognized their shared interests. Mussolini famously declared that Europe would now revolve around this new axis. Now, let's bring Japan into the picture. Japan's story is a bit different, but follows a similar path of ambition and resentment. Japan had rapidly modernized in the late 19th century and, like Italy, was on the winning side of World War I, but they also faced frustration. Western powers, particularly the United States, imposed treaties that limited the size of Japan's navy and resisted its expansion in China. Racial prejudice was also a factor. A Japanese proposed racial equality clause was rejected at the League of Nations. Internally, Japan's government was increasingly dominated by the military. This powerful military faction believed that Japan, a small island nation with few natural resources, had a destiny to dominate Asia. They needed oil, rubber, and iron to fuel their industrial and military machine, and the only way to secure them was through conquest. This led to the invasion of Manchuria in 1931 and a full-scale war with China in 1937. Just like Germany and Italy in Europe, Japan was a revisionist power in Asia, determined to shatter the existing order and establish its own greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. So, what brought Japan together with the European fascists? It was a shared opposition to the major global powers. Germany and Italy were challenging Britain and France in Europe. Japan was challenging Britain, France, the Netherlands, and especially the United States in the Pacific. They saw a common enemy in the Western democracies and the international system they upheld. This common ground was formalized in 1936 with the Anti-Comintern Pact signed between Germany and Japan. On the surface, it was an agreement to oppose international communism, specifically the Soviet Union's Comintern. Italy joined a year later. While anti-communism was genuinely a part of their ideologies, the pact was really a signal to the world. It was a strategic alignment against the Soviet Union, but also implicitly against the Western democracies. It was a way for these three ambitious nations to say, "We're in this together." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place in September 1940 with the Tripartite Pact. This was the official military alliance that created the Axis. Germany, Italy, and Japan formally agreed to support each other if any one of them was attacked by a country not already involved in the war. This was aimed squarely at the United States. Hitler hoped the pact would scare America into staying neutral, allowing him to finish his conquest of Europe without U.S. interference. For Japan, it was a green light to expand southward into the resource-rich European colonies in Southeast Asia, knowing that if the U.S. intervened, Germany would have their back. But here's the crucial part. Despite the grand treaties and shared enemies, the Axis alliance was never a well-oiled machine like the Allies. It was more a marriage of convenience than a union of hearts. Their long-term goals were ultimately self-serving and often conflicted. Germany wanted to dominate Europe. Italy wanted to control the Mediterranean. Japan wanted to rule East Asia and the Pacific. There was very little genuine strategic coordination between them. For example, when Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, Operation Barbarossa, they desperately wanted Japan to attack the Soviets from the east. This would have created a disastrous two-front war for Stalin, but Japan refused. Their eyes were set on the south, on the oil of the Dutch East Indies and the rubber of Malaya. So instead of helping Germany, they attacked Pearl Harbor, which brought the United States, the world's largest industrial power, into the war. This was a strategic nightmare for Hitler. Similarly, there was virtually no joint military planning or intelligence sharing. Germany and Japan fought two almost completely separate wars on opposite sides of the globe. Their ideologies also had key differences. Nazi Germany's racism was central to its entire worldview, yet they allied with Japan, a non-Aryan race. They simply declared the Japanese to be honorary Aryans for political convenience, showing just how flexible their so-called principles could be. So, what ultimately united the Axis? It wasn't a shared culture, a deep friendship, or a coherent global strategy. It was a potent cocktail of three things. First, a deep-seated resentment of the post-World War I global order. Second, a shared ideology of aggressive, expansionist nationalism and militarism. And third, and most importantly, a common set of enemies, the Western democracies and the Soviet Union. Their alliance was a pragmatic, opportunistic partnership built on mutual self-interest. They each saw the others as useful tools to achieve their own regional ambitions. They hoped that by fighting on different fronts simultaneously, they could overwhelm their powerful enemies. But this lack of true unity, this fundamental selfishness, was also their greatest weakness. They weren't a band of brothers. They were three lone wolves hunting in the same forest, and in the end, that wasn't enough to win. Their alliance, born from a desire to violently remake the world, ultimately crumbled under the weight of its own internal contradictions and the combined might of the nations they sought to destroy. Thanks for watching. If you found this deep dive into the Axis alliance interesting, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another piece of history. See you in the next video.